Book 4. Now the queen's lifeblood fed her grievous love wound. An unseen flame gnawed at her hour on hour. His bravery, the glory of his family, came back to her. His face, his words were rooted in her mind, and new love kept sweet rest away. Dawn raised the torch of Phoebus, which is earth's light, and pushed the drizzling shadows from the sky. And stricken Dido told her loving sister, Anna, half-waking dreams have terrified me. This stranger, who has come here as our guest, his face, his walk, his heart's and weapon's strength. I think, it must be true, this is a god's child. Fear marks plebeian spirits. How I pity his hard fate and the long grim war he told of. If ever my mind moved from where I fixed it, I set myself against the ties of marriage after my first love cheated me by dying and made me hate all wedding ceremony. I might relent, this single time, and falter. And I must confess, since poor Zacchaeus fell, since my brothers stained our home with murder, this one alone has moved me. Now I waver. I recognize the remnants of that flame. But let the earth first gape to its foundation, or the all-powerful Father's lightning drive me to the pale shades in Erebus and deep night, before I shamefully break honor's laws. The man who first was part of me has taken my love. He ought to keep it where he's buried. The tears she now shed left her bosom wet. Anna replied, You're more to me than life. Will you let lonely grief devour your whole youth without sweet children and the gifts of Venus? Do you think ashes care or ghosts in graveyards? Both here in Libya and back in Tyre, no suitors tamed your grief. Iarbas and others reared by this rich, victorious Africa are scorned, and now you fight a love that suits you. Recall whose land this is, and you've made your home in. The cities of Gaetulians, never conquered, the wild Numidians and treacherous Syrtis, bare desert and marauding Barcaea encircle you, and conflict looms from Tyre. Your brother threatens. It was the provident gods and Juno's favor that steered the Trojan ships here on the wind. The city that you'll see, the rising empire out of this marriage, Trojan allied arms will bring this Punic town to soaring glory. Seek the god's sanction, make propitious offerings, weave pretexts for delaying as you fet him. Seas raging through the days of wet Orion, ships damaged, and a hard and stubborn sky. This appeal made the spark of passion blaze, lent hope to hesitation, melted shame. First, they approached each temple and each altar with pleas and slaughtered chosen sheep in ritual for Phoebus, law-giving Ceres, Father Bacchus, but Juno first, who joined the bonds of marriage. In her right hand, lovely Dido held the bowl and tipped it on a snow-white heifer's forehead, paraded past God's statues to rich altars, opened each day with gifts, searched for the meaning, cut open in the steaming guts of beasts. O empty-minded prophets, in her madness, what use were prayers in temples? Flame devoured her tender marrow, her heart's wound throbbed in hiding. Soon Dido burned and raved all through the city, as when a deer is wounded far off by a shepherd who is not aware in his arrow has found its mark. Though through Dicte's woods the quarry runs, with the death reed buried in her side. Now Dido leads Aeneas through the fortress, shows him Sidonian wealth, the rising city, begins to speak but leaves her words half said. At fall of daylight, she repeats her banquet and asks to hear again of Trojan suffering. Again she fixates on the teller's words. Her guests go, and the moon puts out its dim light, and falling constellations counsel sleep. She sorrows in the empty house, reclining on the couch he left. She sees and hears his absence. She holds Ascanius, so like his father, in her lap, and cheats her real and shameful love. The towers she started do not rise. The young men no longer drill or build defending rampart supports. The work stalls halfway done, the menace of high walls, and the cranes as tall as heaven. So sickness gripped the queen, who let her folly outrun her good name. Juno, Jove's dear wife and Saturn's daughter, saw and went to Venus. Truly, your son, you have won such glory, such huge spoils. Power worth eternal praise shows in two gods who dupe a mortal woman. I know that you've been wary of our walls here, distrustful when you saw high Carthage settled. Where will this end? Where will this fierce fight take us? Why not a lasting treaty and a contract of marriage? What your heart desired you have. Dido's love burns, her bones draw in its fury. Why not make these one people? We can rule them together. As a Phrygian husband's slave, she'll hand you all these Tyrians as a dowry. But Venus felt the trick in this, the effort to steer Italian power into Libya. She countered, "To agree is merely sane. Who would prefer to take up arms against you? If only what you plan succeeds in practice. Fate, to me, sways uncertain. Is Jove's plan one town for Trojan refugees and Tyrians, an alliance, or a blended population? You, as his wife, could rightly probe his thinking. Ask him, then I'll be with you." Juno answered, "Leave me to do that. Briefly now I'll say, so listen, how we finish what's at hand. Poor Dido and Aeneas are preparing a woodland hunting trip at dawn tomorrow, when the sun's rising rays reveal the curved earth. While horsemen rush to cordon off the passes, I'll mingle rain and hail in a black storm cloud and pour it down and shake the sky with thunder. Their retinue will scatter in the dark. The same cave will receive the Trojan leader and Dido. I'll be there, with your sanction, and join her to him and make her his in marriage on firm ground. These will be the rites." Then Venus agreed and laughed to see the guile behind this. Aurora now rose up, away from ocean. In her fresh rays the gates let chosen troops out who carried various nets and hunting spears. Massilian horsemen, keen-nosed dogs rushed forward. At the bedroom door the Tyrian leaders waited for the queen, whose horse stood, bright in gold and purple, and fiercely stamped and gnawed a foaming bit. At last, with a great retinue, she came. Her punic cloak was edged with rich embroidery, her quiver gold, her hair bound in a gold clasp, and a gold brooch secured her purple robe. The Trojan troops and an excited Iülus came up. Finest of all these was Aeneas, who as her escort joined his ranks with hers. Apollo, coming to his mother's Delos from winter Lycia and the Xanthus river, renews the dance. Around the altar shout Cretans, Dryopians, tattooed Agathyrsians. He walks the slope of Cynthus with his long hair braided and bound with tender leaves and gold. On his shoulders arrows rattle. Just as lively, as beautiful, as noble strode Aeneas. They came into the hills and trackless woods. Wild goats they started from a stony summit, ran down the slope. Deer from another refuge sped off in crowding ranks across the bare plain, in dusty panic to escape the mountain. The boy Ascanius, keen-horsed, keen rider, kept racing past them on the valley floor, wanting a tawny lion from the mountain, or a foam-mouthed boar among so many tame things. But a racket and a tumult now erupted from the sky. A storm cloud shot in, full of hail, scattering Trojans and their Tyrian escorts, and Venus's Trojan grandson through the fields, toward urgent shelter. Streams rushed from the hillsides. The Trojan lord and Dido found the same cave. Primeval Earth and Juno, giver of brides, signaled, and in collusion lightning flashed at the union. On the mountain tops nymphs howled. From this day came catastrophe and death. No thought of public scandal or of hiding her passion troubled Dido any longer. She called it marriage to conceal her shame. Rumor, the swiftest plague there is, went straight out to all the settlements of Libya. She thrives on motion, drawing strength from travel. Tiny and timid first, then shooting upward to hide her head in clouds yet walk the ground. Mother Earth, they say, in anger at the gods, bore this child last, quick-footed, quick-winged sister of Titan Enceladus and giant Coeus. Beneath each feather of the hideous monster, this is the startling legend, is a wide eye, a tongue, a blaring mouth, a pricked-up ear. Between the earth and sky, in shadow, shrieking, she flies at night. No sweet sleep shuts her eyes. By day, she sits as lookout on a rooftop or a high tower, and alarms great cities. Her claws hold both true news and evil lies. She filled the realms now with her tangled talk, chanting in glee a mix of fact and fiction. Aeneas from a Trojan family came here. Beautiful Dido chose him as her lover. What kind of rulers spend the whole long winter sunk deep in luxury and sordid passion? The hideous goddess spread these stories widely, then without pausing flew off to King Iarbas, and with her words piled high and lit his rage. A Garamantian nymph and Ammon's violence created him. His broad lands raised to Jove 100-hued shrines. Priests and altar flames kept constant vigils for the gods, while herds' blood slathered the floor, and bright wreaths decked the doorways. Stung with the rumor now, beside himself, he stood in the gods' presence, at their altars, raised suppliant hands, and prayed insistently. Almighty Jove, to whom the race of Moors on embroidered banquet couches pour libations, do you see this? When you hurl your thunder, Father, is terror needless? Is that fire, that noise up in the clouds, without an aim or meaning? A woman straying on my borders rented a scrap of shore for building on and farming on my conditions. She refused me marriage, but lets Aeneas rule with her? No, rule her. That Paris with his mincing retinue, his perfumed hair tied in an Asian headdress, lords it over his lute. So empty legend alone has made us fill your shrines with gifts? This was the king's prayer as he grasped the altar. The Almighty heard. His eyes turned toward the palace and the lovers who'd forgotten all decorum. He spoke to Mercury and gave this order. Call the west wind, my son. Glide on your wings. Speak to the Trojan leader, who is loitering at Tyrian Carthage, with no thought for cities granted by fate. Go, hurry my words landward. This wasn't what his lovely mother promised, or why, both times, she saved him from the Greeks, but to rule Italy, beget an empire that roars with war, to give us noble Teucer's descendants, who will bring the whole world laws. If this majestic future cannot rouse him to shoulder his own glory in this labor, does he begrudge his son the Roman citadel? What can he gain here in a hostile nation? Ausonian progeny, Lavinian fields, the sum of what I want him told, set sail. He spoke. So on his mighty father's orders the son prepared, first tying golden sandals onto his feet, to take him swift as wind high over land and ocean on their wings. He took the wand that calls pale souls from Orcus and sends them into gloomy Tartarus, wakens and puts to sleep and opens perished eyes. With this he drove the winds and skimmed through chaos of clouds. He saw the brow and the steep flanks of rocky Atlas, prop of the high heavens. Atlas, with back clouds always at his head, where the pines grow, and wind and rain blast hard. The snow spreads down his shoulders. Off the chin of the old man torrents pour. Ice locks his sharp beard. Here Mercury halted, poised on balanced wings, then hurled his whole weight headlong towards the waves. There are some birds that skim the shoreline waters, or round the base of crags where fish are teeming. Like them, Silene's native sliced the winds, left his mother's father, passed from sky to earth, and landed on the sandy shore of Libya. He set his feathered feet among the shanties and saw Aeneas laying out the towers and building houses. Tawny jasper flecked his sword. His shoulders trailed the glowing richness of a purple cloak with thin gold stripes, a present woven by wealthy Dido. The gods scolded. Your wife must like you placing the foundations for lofty Carthage, such a splendid city, forgetting your own kingdom that awaits you. The ruler of the gods, whose strength bends heaven and earth, has sent me down from bright Olympus, commanding that I fly here with this message. What will this loitering in Libya bring you? If you're unmoved by all the coming splendor, which is a weight you do not wish to shoulder, think of your hopes as Iulus grows, your heir, owed to an Italian realm and Roman soil. These were the words from the Cyllenian's mouth. Still speaking, he passed out of human vision and trailed away under the thin air until the thin air hid him. This apparition left Aeneas stunned. His hair stood up and words stuck in his throat. He burned to run, however sweet this land was. The gods' august command had terrified him. But how? What would he dare say to the queen in her passion? What beginning could he make? His mind kept darting and his thoughts dividing through the whole matter and each baffling question. After much wavering, this seemed the best plan. He called Mnestheus and brave Serestus and Sergestus. They must get the men together quietly, rig the fleet, and hide the reason for the stirring. Meanwhile, the good lady Dido would not expect such strong love could be broken. He would approach her, seeking out the best words at the kindest time. With great alacrity, these men obeyed in everything he ordered. But who can fool a lover? Soon the queen, even in safety anxious, sensed the trick, though no ship moved yet. Evil rumor told her the fleet was being fitted for a journey. She raved all through the town in helpless passion, like a bacchant the biennial mysteries roused with shrieks of ritual and brandished emblems and shouts that summon her to dark Cytheron. She faced off with Aeneas and accused him. "You traitor! Did you think that you could hide such a great crime, that you could sneak away? The pledge you made, our passion for each other, even your Dido's brutal death won't keep you? Monster, you toil beneath these winter skies and rush to cross the deep through northern blasts for a strange home on someone else's land? If ancient Troy still stood today to sail to, would you make off across that surging plain? You run from me? By your pledged hand, my tears, since I am stripped of everything but these, our union, and the wedding we embarked on. If I have ever earned it through my kindness, have pity on my tottering house and me. If pleading has a chance still, change your mind. The Libyan clans and nomad rulers hate me. So do the Tyrians because of you. You ruined me and my good name, my one path to heaven. My guest leaves me here to die. Now I must call you guest instead of husband. Pygmalion, my brother, will raise my walls. Gaetulian Iarbas lead me off a captive. If only, though deserting me, you gave me a child. If I could see a small Aeneas play in my palace with a face like yours, I wouldn't feel so cheated and abandoned." She spoke. He kept his eyes down at Jove's orders, struggling to force his feelings from his heart. Finally, briefly, "Name your favors. List them. There isn't one I could deny. Never will I regret Ilyssa's memory, while I have memory, while I breathe and move. A little on the facts, though. Don't imagine I meant to sneak away. As for husband, I never made a pact of marriage with you. If fate would let me live the life I chose, if I had power over my decisions, I would have stayed at Troy, where I could tend beloved graves. Priam's high citadel would stand, and I would restore Troy for the conquered. But Grinian Apollo and the edicts of Lycia drive me into Italy. My love, my home, are there. You are Phoenician, but love to see your towers in Libya. How can you then resent us Trojans settling in Italy, our lawful foreign kingdom? When the night covers earth with drizzling shadows, when fiery stars rise, then the troubled ghost of my father, dear Anchises, hounds my dreams. I know I cheat my darling son Ascanius of fields fate given him in his western realm. From Jove himself, a heavenly emissary, on both our heads, I swear it, brought me orders down through the air. In the clear day I saw him come through the gate, and these ears heard his voice. Don't goad me and yourself with these complaints. Italy is against my will." Although her back was turned, she still surveyed the speaker blankly and distractedly over her shoulder. Then her fury broke out. "Traitor, there is no goddess in your family, no Dardanus. The sharp-rocked Caucasus gave birth to you. Hirsanian tigers nursed you. Why pretend now? Is something worse in store? Was there a sigh for tears of mine? A glance? Did he give in to tears himself, or pity? Injustice overwhelms me, which concerns great Juno, and our father, Saturn's son. What bond can hold? I helped a castaway. I shared my kingdom with him like a fool. The ships you lost, I saved your friends from death. Hot madness drives me. Now the fortune-teller Apollo, Lycian lotteries, Jove dispatching dire orders earthward through the god's own mouthpiece, as if such cares disturb the god's calm heaven. I will not cling to you or contradict you. Ride windy waves to chase Italian kingdoms. I hope that heaven's conscience has the power to trap you in the rocks and force your penance down your throat as you call my name. I'll send my black flames there. When cold death draws my soul out, my ghost will hound you. Even among dead souls in hell, I'll know when you are finally paying." In torment, she broke off and turned away, and ran out of his sight into the palace. and there he froze, with much he would have said. She fainted, and was lifted by her maids, and the bed inside the marble walls received her. Now the right-thinking hero, though he wished to give some comfort for so great a grief, obeyed the gods, returning to his ships, while he continued groaning, deeply lovesick. The Trojans fell to work and pulled the vessels down from the beach in one long line. Tarred hulls floated. The busy crews brought leafy oars and logs with bark still on. That rush from everywhere in town resembled ants plundering a giant heap of spelt to store at home in readiness for winter. Over the grass the thin black phalanx goes, loaded with booty. Some are heaving huge grains forward, and some are marshalling and prodding, so the entire pathway hums with work. What did you feel then, Dido, when you saw? How did you sob when all that shoreline seethed? You looked out from your tower, and the sea was an industrious uproar and commotion. Reprobate love, wrencher of mortal hearts, he drives her now to tears, and now to beg and cravenly submit her pride to love, whatever leaves her with the hope of life. Anna, you see the whole shore in a tumult. They come from everywhere. Sails draw the breeze. Sailors in joy hang garlands on the sterns. As surely as I saw this great grief coming, so surely I'll endure. But do one favor and pity, since the traitor was your friend, yours only. You were trusted with his secrets. You know how to approach him when he's weak. Go, sister, kneel to my proud enemy. I was no Greek at Aulis when they swore to smash his race. I sent no fleet to Troy, nor made his father's ghost in ashes homeless. How can he block his ears against my words? Where is he running? As a last sad love gift, he ought to wait for winds that make it easy. I do not plead the marriage he betrayed. Let the man go be king in charming Latium. I just want time, a pause to heal my mind and teach myself to mourn in my defeat. I ask this final wretched favor, sister, alone, and I will give my death as interest. Weeping, she made this plea. Her grieving sister delivered it repeatedly. No tears could move him. No words found his sympathy. His fate and Jove were barriers to his ears. As in the Alps, the north wind blasts a solid, tough, and venerable oak, competing to uproot it. With a creak at the blows, it strews its high leaves on the ground, but clasps the cliff with roots that go as far toward hell as its top reaches into heaven. Just as relentless were the words that battered the hero. In his noble heart he suffered, but tears did nothing. His resolve endured. Appalled now by her fate, poor Dido prayed for death. She wished to see the sky no longer. Other things also drove her from the daylight. Her gifts on incense-burning altars rotted, horrible to describe. Wine turned to black and filthy gore the second that she poured it. No one was told. Her sister did not know it. There stood inside her home a marble shrine to her late husband. There she worshipped him, spreading white fleece and hanging holy wreaths. She thought she heard his voice there, echoing, calling. When the night's darkness covered all the earth, she listened to a lone owl on the roof tree, whose song of death kept trailing into sobs. Many grim warnings of the long-dead seers panicked her too. In dreams, a fierce Aeneas chased her. She raved in fear or was abandoned, friendless, forever walking a long road, seeking her Tyrians in a lifeless land. It was like Pentheus seeing bands of Furies and a pair of Thebes, and a sun split in two. As in a play, the son of Agamemnon runs from his mother's torches and black snakes, while vengeful demons lurk outside the door. Madness and grief filled her defeated heart, and she chose death. She had a time and method, but hid her plan behind a face of peace and hope, in speaking to her wretched sister. Anna, I've found a way, congratulate me, to bring him back or set me free from love. Next to the setting sun and ocean's boundary in Ethiopia, where giant Atlas turns the star-blazing heavens on his shoulder, lived a Massilian priestess I've now found, who guarded the Hesperides temple there, nourished the snake, preserved the sacred branches, and strewed sleep-bringing poppy and moist honey. She says her spells soothe any mind she wishes, or else bring grueling troubles into others, stop rivers and turn stars back in their courses, and call out ghosts at night. The earth will roar beneath your feet, ash trees will rush down mountains, Sister, I swear it by your darling life and by the gods, I would not choose such weapons. Build me a pyre in secret in the courtyard. The arms that evil man hung in our bedroom, the clothes I stripped from him, our bed of union, my death, put it all there. I want the leavings of the criminal destroyed. She's shown me how. Now she was silent, and her face went pale. But Anna did not guess her sister's funeral hid in these strange rites, or suspect such frenzy. What could be worse than when Zacchaeus died? She did as she was told. Deep in the house, beneath the sky, a pyre now towered high, with logs of pine and oak. The queen festooned the walls with funeral garlands. Conscious of what must be, she put his picture on the bed above his sword and cast-off clothes. Atlas encircled her. The loose-haired priestess shouted 300 gods' names: Erebus, Chaos, three-faced Diana, who is triple Hecate. She sprinkled drops she said were from Avernus. Herbs appeared, cut with bronze knives at the full moon. Swollen and oozing coal-black milk of poison, a love charm, too, torn from a new foal's forehead before the mare could get it. Dido, with sacred meal in clean hands, robes loose, one sandal off, now stood at the high altar, called gods, called fate-wise stars as witnesses. She prayed to anything in heaven that sees and punishes a broken bond of love. Now it was night, and all the earth's weary creatures slept peacefully. The woods and savage waters were still. The stars were halfway through their journeys above the tranquil fields. Cattle and bright birds of the broad lakes and brambly wilderness all lay asleep beneath the noiseless sky. Their troubles soothed, their sufferings forgotten, but not the desolate Phoenician queen. Her heart and eyes shunned darkness and the ease of sleep. Her torments thronged, her love ran wild. They came and went on seething tides of madness. Her heart was churning with unceasing questions. What should I do? Go back to where I'll be laughed at and beg to marry a Numidian prince after I turn those suitors all away? Follow the Trojan ships and do whatever the Trojans order? Surely they'll recall the help I gave, and for the past's sake, help me. But then again, would they allow the outcasts on their proud ships? Poor fool, you're not familiar with the treachery of Laomedon's descendants? Would I trail those cheering sailors all alone, a deserter? Would I take my Tyrian ranks as escorts? Would those barely torn from Sidon endure another sea voyage on my orders? No, die, you've earned it. Give the sword your sorrow. But you, my sister, weakened by my tears, turned folly to disaster and defeat. I could not live a blameless life, unmarried like a wild thing, and be spared this agony. I broke my promise to the dead Zacchaeus. Out of her heart these words of sorrow broke. Aeneas was asleep on the high stern, in confidence that everything was ready, when in a dream he saw the god again. The form had Mercury's face and his complexion, his yellow hair, and a handsome young man's body, and it renewed the warning from before. You sleep, child of the goddess, while disaster teeters above and perils lurk around? Fool, can't you hear your guide, the west wind, breathing? The woman, who now knows that she will die, is tossed in scheming, heaving tides of rage. While you still can, you need to run for it, or you'll see storms of wreckage and the glare of brutal torches. Flames will fill the beach if the dawn finds you loitering in this land. Be quick and go. A woman is a changing and fitful thing. The form ebbed into black night. The sudden vision of this chilling shade ripped him from sleep. He shook his comrades, too. Wake, now, and take your places on the benches. Hurry, unfurl the sails. Once more from heaven a god's come, driving our escape. Start cutting the twisted ropes. We follow you, whichever god you might be. Again we cheer your orders. Be with us, guide us graciously, and bring us favoring stars. He drew his flashing sword and struck the mooring line. A single passion seized all of them. They ran and snatched their gear up and quit the beach. The blue plain now was hidden by skimming ships. The oars raised twists of foam. Dawn, risen from her husband's saffron bed, was scattering her light across the world. The sky grew white above the queen's high tower. Below, the sails went forward in a row. The port, the shore were bare, the sailors gone. Repeatedly, she struck her lovely breast and tore her gold hair. Jupiter, he's leaving. A stranger comes and goes and mocks my power. Why doesn't the whole city arm and follow on ships torn madly from their moorings? Hurry! Bring torches, pass out arms, ram the oars forward. What? Where is this new madness taking me? Poor thing, your crimes, you feel them only now? Not when you made him king? This is his pledged word. They say he brought his household gods with him, and hauled his frail old father on his shoulders. I could have scattered the torn pieces of him across the waves. I could have killed his friends, his son, and made a banquet for the father, a struggle I might not have won. No matter, I still would die. My torches should have swarmed his camp and gangways till they made a pyre for father and son, the whole race, and myself. Come, sun, the blazing lamp of all creation, Juno, the witness and the go-between, and Hecate, a name shrieked at the crossroads, avenging furies and my own death demons. Turn heaven's justice where it should be turned. This is my prayer now. If that living curse must skim his way to harbor in that country, if Jove and fate require this to happen, then let a bold and warlike people drive him out of his realm and tear his Iulius from him. Make him a suppliant. Let him see the death of blameless friends. Humiliating peace terms will bring no happy old age in his kingdom. He'll fall and lie unburied in the sand. And now my last plea, gushing with my blood. Tyrians, hound with hatred for all time the race he founds. My ashes call from you this service. Let there be no pacts of friendship. Out of my grace let an avenger rise, with fire and iron for Dardanian settlers. Now, some day, when the power is there to strike, our shores will clash, weapons and seas collide. My curse is war for Trojans and their children. She finished. Now her thoughts went everywhere, seeking the fastest way to leave the light. She told the old nurse of Sichaeus, Barksy, her own had died back in the fatherland. Darling, please bring my sister Anna. Hurry. Have her splash river water on my body and bring the beasts and other offerings. Cover your own brow with a pious fillet. I'll now round off the ritual I began for Jove below the earth, to end my pain, putting to flame his pyre, the Trojan's life. Quickly the fond old woman hobbled off. Now Dido's own grim plans had made her frantic. Her red eyes darted, and her cheeks were blotched and shook. But she grew pale in facing death. She burst into the center of the house, frenzied, and climbed the pyre and drew the sword from Troy. She hadn't asked for it for this. Here she surveyed the bed she knew so well, and the Trojan clothes. In tearful contemplation she lay a little while and spoke these last words. Sweet spoils, while fate and God still kept you sweet, receive my breath and free me from this pain. I lived, I ran the race that fate allotted. I'll send the underworld a noble ghost. I saw the walls of my great city standing, avenged my husband, made my brother pay. A happy, no, a more than happy life, if Trojan ships had never touched these shores. She kissed the bed. I die without revenge, but let me die. I like this path to darkness. Let the cruel Trojan's eyes take in these flames. The omen of my death will go with him. Her maids now saw her falling on her sword, still speaking, saw her blood foam down the blade and fleck her hands. A shout rose to the rooftop, and through the shaken city rumor raged. Long drawn-out shrieks of grief and woman's keening brimmed from the buildings. Anguish filled the sky, as if invading troops brought Carthage down, or ancient Tyre were sacked, and flames were scaling the rooftops of the houses and the temples. Her sister heard and ran to her in panic, clawing her cheeks, bruising her breast with blows. As she plunged through the crowd, she called that doomed name. This was your purpose, sister, to deceive me? The pyre, the flames, the altars bring me this? How could you leave me like a cast-off thing and go alone? You should have called me with you. One sword, 1 hour, one agony for both. I piled this wood. I called our fathers' gods to let you lie here, alone here, you heartless monster. You killed yourself and me, the city's people, and the Phoenician lords. Come, give me water to wash these wounds, and if a last breath hovers, my mouth will take it. She had climbed the pyre, and held her sister now, that fading life, and moaned and mopped the black blood with her clothes. Dido now strained to lift her heavy eyes, but failed. Around the sword, her breast wound hissed. 3 times she rose a little, on her elbow, collapsed each time, and with her wandering vision searched for the bright high sky and sighed to find it. Queen Juno cut this torture short, in pity, dispatching Iris earthward from Olympus to free the struggling spirit from its bonds. There was no fate or justice in her death. Her madness brought a wretched early end. Proserpina had cut no lock of blonde hair to dedicate this life to Stygian Orcus. So dewy Iris soared on saffron wings, trailing 1,000 sun-reflecting colors, and floated near her head. I am to take this gift to Dis and free you from your body. Her right hand made the stroke. All living heat vanished, and life dissolved into the wind.